What is poppin' YouTube? At the 106 in a super flex rookie draft, you have a hard decision to make. Assuming Marvin Harrison Jr., Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Malik Neighbors are all off the board, you have two guys staring you down the barrel in Brock Bowers and Odunze. And today we're going to discuss who I would be taking ahead and what are the pros and cons to each of those decisions. Let's go. As we know, in these rookie drafts, the rookie fever, the rookie hype absolutely loves to get out of control. And as we get into the combine season, as we head towards the NFL draft, these picks are only going to gain value. These players are already going to get more valuable. Like I said, we're comparing Odunze and Brock Bowers today. And Keep Trade Cut has already uploaded these players so we can kind of get an idea of where the community is already starting to rank them. We actually have Brock Bowers, who slides in pre-combine, pre-draft spot at tight end 2 at overall player 35 in Superflex rankings, puts him in tier 10. And then Odunze slides in as wide receiver 24, player 56. Now that's quite the gap. So if you were just going to assume, hey, Caleb, I'm going to listen to KTC, I'm going to take the more valuable asset and I'm going to take Brock Bowers. Okay, I hear you. But let's dive into each of their situations, talk about them both as prospects, and kind of why you might have quite a debate here at the 106. So look at 2021, 2022, 2023. The average hit rate has been 52% over the last 3 seasons. Knowing this, knowing that we have somewhere around a 45 to 46% hit rate with our picks, that gives us a 1 out of 2 chance that the player that we're going to select is actually going to be valuable for our team. So not saying this to tell you to go trade away your 2024 pick, but going into this conversation on whether I should take Brock Bowers, whether I should take Odunze, we do need to understand that little bit of context. Now, a lot of the Dynasty community, we have always been draft these first round drafted wide receivers. Don't draft a tight end in the first round. Tight ends have a less hit rate than wide receivers over the last few seasons. Well, that has been true mostly because there were a ton of worthy tight ends to be drafted in the first round in their Superflex drafts. I mean, we got Kyle Pitts, we had Dalton Kincaid last season, but even someone like Sam Laporta, who was bust onto the scene as the tight end 1 in the Dynasty landscape, was drafted in the second round. So a lot of people were always like, hey, take your shots on tight end in the second round, get some undrafted free agents, buy low, maybe get some older production at tight end. It's really hard to get these early round tight ends, because even thinking back to a guy like TJ Hawkinson, who was drafted as a first round Superflex Dynasty pick, it took him 1 season really to get his full belt under him to start really producing some fantasy football points. But when we look at a guy like Brock Bowers, I just think it's hard for us to really push Brock Bowers down the board. 6'4", 230, going to be drafted in the top 6 picks by someone. I mean, he's being mocked to the Chargers all the time, which would be a great landing spot with him and Justin Herbert. But my man's an absolute pass-catching machine, 4.48 40-yard dash. When we look at his 2023 stats, they weren't as great as 2022. He only played in 10 games, but had 56 receptions on 57 targets, 714 yards, 6 total touchdowns with a 98% catch rate. He had a 12.5% target share. I mean, the years previous, he had 16.1, 20% target share, so his target share was a little bit down. But Carson Beck was absolutely throwing the ball to everybody, really distributing it really well, compared to a little bit of what Stenson Bennett was just locking onto Brock Bowers. But I love some Brock Bowers, and I don't think there's any reason for us not to have this man in consideration at the 106. We, as a Dynasty community, we've gotten a lot better with evaluating and really picking out these tight ends. Collectively gotten really sharp at really addressing the tight end market in recent seasons. So really, the last 3 highest correlated seasons between redraft ADP and points per game have come in the past 3 seasons. So I think that's where it's exciting about Brock Bowers, because maybe before Brock Bowers would get pushed down the board in your Dynasty Superflex leagues, because we say, hey, we wait on tight ends. Maybe people aren't excited about tight ends. A lot more people are playing in tight end premium leagues. So that could also be boosting up Brock Bowers. But like I said, getting this top end tight end 1 is such a points per game warp advantage at the position that Brock Bowers definitely has to be in consideration here at the 106. Now, moving to Odunze, who's the clear wide receiver 3 of this class. The thing that we have to understand with Mr. Odunze, he's just a bigger Chris Olave. That's what I keep comparing him to. 6'3", 215. When we look at what his strengths and how he translated into the NFL, really last season, he was competing with 2 other NFL caliber type wide receivers. This reminded me a little bit of the Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba trio at Ohio State a few years ago, but still had 88 targets, 87 receptions in 14 games, 17.9 yards per reception with 1,500 yards last season, 98% catch rate, 13 receiving touchdowns, and even did 104 yards on special teams. So we like Rome. Very fluid, very big wide receiver. So like, what are some of his strengths? He's really smooth. He really maintains solid, consistent speed all throughout all three levels of the field. I really like that he has late hands. Like if a ball gets thrown late, because Michael Penix absolutely loved to chuck the ball. He really has a rare skill where I haven't seen a ton of wide receivers. Like I always remind of like Larry Fitzgerald, where you kind of just threw the ball in his vicinity. Even if he wasn't looking at it, you just get that hands up super late and be able to catch it. I really love his route running. I really love his hands. And Rome's projected to be drafted in the top 10 as well. So when you're comparing these two players, you're like, Caleb, who do I take? A top 10 drafted wide receiver, or do I take a top 10 drafted tight end? And for me, when I'm really looking at Rome and everything that he brings, but if he lands in a spot like he's going to gets drafted to the Chicago Bears or somewhere like that, like I would be really excited for Rome. I've even seen maybe projections that he maybe goes to the Giants. I don't necessarily love that from Rome, but even still, he'd be the clear wide receiver one on that Giants roster. So when you're really sitting down, you're like, Caleb, okay, so you've told me the hit rates. We've talked a little bit about tight ends. We've talked a little bit about wide receivers. Like, what's the overall point of this video? My overall point here is I'm taking Brock Bowers in this draft ahead of Rome Odunze. And I know metrics, I know the thought process around taking a tight end early, like the hit rates are not necessarily there. But if we look at the overall hit rates the last 2 years, even with taking first round drafted wide receivers, it hasn't been absolutely amazing. So there's a 1 in 2 shot that I take Brock Bowers over Rome at the 106 that is going to benefit me. But we know what these tight ends are doing. We know how they're being used. And Brock Bowers is that prototypical catching tight end where he won't just be used to block, where he will be involved in the passing attack. And I absolutely love that. Not that I don't love Rome. I think if you're at the 107 and you end up drafting Rome, that he could be a good pick for you. But give me some Brock Bowers over Rome Odunze at the 106. Let me know down below what you think of this. Definitely things could change. Landing spots could definitely play a part. But at this point in the offseason, I will be taking Brock Bowers ahead of Rome Odunze at the 106. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll be back with another video on Monday.